So, a 1-minute sponsor spotlight, our last one here for the day. We'd like to recognize Build, who is a gold sponsor of this conference for the 4th year. They've been with us right from the beginning. With 1,500 member companies, Build is the voice of the home building, land development, and professional renovation industry in the Greater Toronto Area. The building and renovation industry provides $33 billion in investment value and employs 271,000 people in the region. Build is proudly affiliated with the Ontario and Canadian Home Builders Association. Thank you, Build, once again for supporting our conference. And now to our final presentation of the day. We have Jesse Klimetz and Lorene Cassier from Quadrangle joining us. Lorene is the Accessibility and Wellness Practice Lead of Human Space at Quadrangle. In this capacity, Lorene coordinates and manages all aspects of the accessibility practice, including team operations, project delivery, and client relationships. Jesse is the Director of Human Space, responsible for oversight of the consulting practice and its strategic growth. Their presentation is on marketing accessibility in developments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jesse Klimetz and Lorene Cassier.
Great. Okay. Hello. Okay. Lorene, I'll just. All right. Well, thanks for everyone who's who are sticking around for the final presentation. It's great. So we'll just. Okay.
How do we load it?
It's right there. It's on.
It's not up there. Oh, okay. Thanks, everyone. So as we were introduced, we're from Human Space, which is a consulting division of Quadrangle. Before we get into our presentation, I just want us to stop and think about what disability is. One prevailing perspective is that our notion of disability is that disability is a mismatch between the needs of the individual and the service, the product, and the environment offered. It's not about a personal trait, it's a relative condition brought about bad design. Am I not moving the slides? Okay, we're good, I think. I must have missed the technical orientation to the event. Our vision at Human Space is to elevate the built environment that embodies inclusivity, resilience, and connectivity. So, as you can imagine, I'm Lorene. I'm a practice lead at Quadrangle. My background is actually in healthcare, but I have a strong interest in the built environment and what it means for well-being.
Hi, everyone. I am Jesse Klimetz. I am the director at Human Space. I'm also the director of business development at Quadrangle. I'm an architect by training and an accessibility and universal design specialist. So the desire for more accessible built environments has really grown over the past decade with an increase in legislation and an emergence of best practices. Developers and landowners are now in a great position to answer the demand for accessible communities, buildings, and spaces. So today in this session, we're going to explore some common misconceptions surrounding accessibility in real estate and how we can advance social inclusion and long-term property value when we consider how to better integrate and promote accessibility within the marketplace.
All right, so the marketing challenge number 1 is the idea or concept that designing to the building code and that the AODA is enough. So current context, just want to take a very quick moment to run through sort of what exists in terms of the design framework and the minimum requirements for accessibility. So as some of you may be familiar with, the AODA, the Accessibility for Disabilities with Ontarians Act, has multiple components to it. But in fact, it's the design of public spaces standard, the 4th box in the corner, that covers elements around the design of our built environment. So this is what the AODA covers, our exterior environment. The Ontario Building Code has multiple areas around what's required in the built environment, but the accessibility pieces focus within the interior about getting into and throughout the space, elements around washrooms, some components from residential units, but when you break down these design requirements, they're specific to mobility. The third component that leads the legislative framework around design and accessibility in Ontario is the Ontario Human Rights, or the Code in Ontario. A big proponent of the design, the big proponent around the elements in this is around designing for dignity, independence, integration, and equal opportunity. But when you piece these three together, it provides the legal framework for designing for accessibility. So the design of public spaces, the OBC, and some municipalities will have their minimum required standards come together to shape what's the minimum expectation. There's been enough precedence and history within Ontario that even designing to these minimum requirements, that a series of human rights complaints have been filed with the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. And one such evidence, one such thing is around the idea based in research and evidence-based design. Sorry, there's a disconnect here between my computer and this, so forgive me. So, based on research and evidence-based design, we know that to meet 95% of the needs of people who use mobility devices, we require a 2.5 meter turning circle, which is probably a scary number for people in this room. But what we do know from evidence is that as these turning circles get smaller and smaller, fewer and fewer people are unable to use a space. And what's really scary is that the Ontario Building Code calls for turning circles in the areas of 1,500 or 1.5 meters to 1.7 millimeters. What this means is that if we're designing to the minimum standards of the building code, we're actually creating spaces that are highly possible and most likely unusable by the majority of people using mobility devices in North America. One way in which to shape the discussion in terms of doing better and reframing disability in design is ideas around universal design principles to provide some basic requirements around how to think about design differently, integrating an inclusive design process, the idea of bringing a diverse set of perspectives into the design discussion, and ideas around disability-led design. The idea of having design professionals brought into programs, brought into the design program with people who have disabilities to lead and shape the design. One example we'd like to share with you is the Daniels Accessibly Design Program. Is anyone in the group here from Daniels? This is a program that we worked with Daniels, and the idea was to create a set of design guidelines and pre-established layouts for accessible units for people who use mobility devices. ADP units are available on request and are at no extra cost to the buyer. And because of the upfront planning of these ADP units are ready, it's very easy for the developer to provide. The units are designed to prioritize the needs of people using mobility devices, and providing access and into the units was a key priority, exceeding those minimum requirements in the building code. Elements such as accessible kitchens, roll-out balconies, and strategically designed washrooms or roll-out showers were part of the key decision-making programs, key decision factors in the design program. As of the fall, a total of 41 ADP units have been sold to date. This particular program is a great example of the developer taking the lead in meeting the needs of their clients and designing beyond the minimum requirements and tapping to the underserviced markets that exist. Marketing challenge number 2. The idea that designing for disability is about designing for wheelchairs. So, question to the group. What is the most prevalent type of disability that exists out there? Show of hands. How many people think it's around mobility? Vision? This gentleman, vision? Hearing? No one else has any opinions? It's actually pain. So from this perspective, the concept of who's living with disability expands that conversation. According to the 2017 census on disability, 22% of Canadians are living with disability. That's approximately 6.2 million people. At Human Space, we like to think about the concept of designing for disability is about thinking about the range of abilities that exist, from mobility, hearing, vision, strength, and cognition. The OCAD-U UCO project was a project led by our interiors team. OCAD UCO's goal was, through their studio-style environment, was to encourage learning through intensive teamwork in a maker culture. The collaboration space can bring up to 200 people, and it also is well suited to host social engagement, creative showcases, or corporate meetings. Our interior design team worked with OCAD's principles of universal design that seamlessly integrated accessibility for a wide range of abilities and supported the required flexibility of the space and the program. There was a strategic use of color in terms of wayfinding and placemaking, and also thinking about small opportunities for private conversations and thought. Pops of orange to highlight the elevator doors, marking the entry and exit in the space, and its correlation to the reception was critical in terms of thinking about providing people navigation and orientation into the space. These have been critical design features when designing for people with cognitive disabilities, but if we really stop and take a moment, it really supported a good, usable design for the space. The idea here was that the design for people was rooted around universal design principles. The flexibility provided by integrating universal design principles benefited OCAD-U's ability to customize their space for varying program needs and the diverse population it serves.
Okay, I'll just grab this from you. Thank you. Okay, accessibility does not create value. Marketing challenge number 3. So, Lorene spoke a little bit about giving you an introduction to accessibility and thinking about accessibility really beyond mobility. But really just wanted to touch on, why should we care about accessibility from an economic perspective? Well, a few interesting stats to just bring forward. By 2036, as the population ages, 1 in 5 Ontarians will have a disability. And people with disabilities, as well as the aging population, will represent 40%, or $536 billion in total income in Ontario by 2036. We're also seeing some other interesting information that customers with disabilities are a growing market, from manufacturing and product industries to retail spending. And for example, in Ontario, we're seeing that improved accessibility can generate up to $9.6 billion in new retail spending each year. And these are statistics that are coming from reputable sources within the government. And but what we need to pay attention to is that with these opportunities that are coming forward, we're really seeing that a lack of access or not considering accessibility within our built environment is really hindering the opportunity for retail spending, hindering job opportunities within the workforce, and also flexible housing options. So Lorene pointed out the Daniels Accessibly Designed program, But we're also seeing there's a large shift happening with empty nesters and baby boomers that are moving more into multi-unit residential buildings over time and are looking for flexibility to age in place or what we like to call lifespan housing. So I'm just going to share an example of a project that was designed by Quadrangle. It's a project called 100 Broadview in Toronto's east end of the city. And like many of the older buildings in the Greater Toronto Area, this property suffered from a lack of identity, access to the ground floor, and it required that typical, we see in a lot of our commercial buildings, the 7 steps up to get to the first level. Additionally, there was a minuscule lobby that made the building inaccessible to persons with the use of mobility devices or those that may be parents with strollers, you name it, walking aids, to really be to access from street level. So the solution here, and now this is for Hallmark Properties, if any of you are aware of them and this project. The solution here was to cut away at the first floor slab to open up the former basement as a lower ground commercial level. And the actual intervention here was a brightly colored, extensive ramping system, and this design was inspired by a skateboard park concept, and a reimagined stair structure that bridges the entry from the street level to the basement and to the ground floor. So it really gives this once anonymous property an engaging retrofit with a strong new brand and identity. And the solution not only allows for improved entry and mobility access throughout the building, but it also presented a strong business case to the property owner, Hallmark. Quadrangle also introduced large super graphics for wayfinding in the shared hallways. And a clean look and bright colors were created by the distinctive branding for the building, and also introduced bold and clear wayfinding. And viewed from the street level, the use of clear signage and a prominent location at the entry of the building created a sense of identity, and while also being able to see inside the building at this ramping system that was put into place. So opening up access to the podium level really allowed Hallmark to find new leasing opportunities within the space. Also allowed the property owner to retain quality tenants and to increase overall base rents at the building. So it's really an interesting example of how opening access to a typical building in Toronto that was deemed inaccessible really created new potential for the owner and as well for the visitors and users of the building. And marketing challenge number 4, this is our last marketing challenge. Accessibility is ugly. There are opportunities to challenge this statement and make accessibility beautiful and appealing, so I'm going to try to prove that. So turning to the hotel industry, are any of you in the hotel industry, any show of hands? Yeah, a few, okay. So here's an example of a barrier-free suite within a hotel that we've traditionally been designing and been seeing in the marketplace for years. It's that institutional healthcare look with a certain lack of appeal. But knowing the demand of an aging demographic and baby boomers and the desire for travel, hotel owners and managers are now considering options for creating suites that are more appealing. So in a case study that was developed by Quadrangle in association with our Human Space team, we looked at ways for reimagining a typical barrier-free hotel suite. So here it is. Envisioned here is a dramatic change from the conventional 350 square foot barrier-free suite. Accessible elements here are seamlessly integrated that they're actually become easily missed, and it doesn't become obvious. Given complete freedom of imagination, we were able to incorporate generous clearances, multifunctional details, and audible and visual elements within luxurious finishes to elevate the guest experience. So just on the slide here, we're introducing a flexible open concept, open closet that contains an easy-to-reach lowered closet rack and a lower drawer that can pull out to double as a stool, height-adjustable countertops, audio-visual elements, including a doorbell and emergency alert system that operate through the Cove lighting system. And by also fitting out the bathroom with a sliding door rather than a swing hinge door, we're able to maximize the floor area to offer necessary turning space for those that may use mobility devices or walking aids. And looking at the bathroom, from the black shower tiles to the contrasting brass fixtures to the floral wall, all of these details were carefully considered to really give hotel guests a luxurious experience. Each of the robe hooks are individually lit in addition to being fixed at differing heights, and the roll-in shower features a large wooden bench, toiletries printed with braille, and grab bars that are really an elegant mix of textured wood with brass detailing. And the layout of the space feels comfortable and flexible, but really incorporates all of the desired front approaches, side approaches, turning spaces, and latch side clearances. So the project shows, and we're getting a lot of interest in this, but the project to us really shows how accessible elements and fixtures can be seamlessly integrated into the design of the space, that it becomes discernible. So accessibility can be beautiful, creating welcoming experience for travelers, and it really improves the overall hotel experience.
You want to forward it, Jesse? So, in terms of marketing accessibility, if you recall that by 2035, 40% of the consumer base will be people with disabilities, are you ready to meet the market demand? What we've said is that accessibility is about doing better, exceeding the minimum requirements that are in the Ontario Building Code and the design of public spaces, understanding what the current context is and how we can do better, the idea of building for today, for tomorrow, and designing for the range of abilities that exist. The idea that accessibility can open up the market, and what we've seen in our 100 Broadview project. And the idea that design be the best that it can be. The idea that is it unremarkably accessible, or what I like to call seamlessly accessible. Embracing the business case for accessibility is a win-win proposition for all organizations and people. And with that, we ask you, are you ready? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great, okay. With 8 minutes to go. Look at that.
Wow, you got us finished early. That's a first at our
Yes,
conference.
yes.
Thank you, Lorene. Thank you, Jesse, very much.
Great.
And on that note, our conference comes to an end for another year. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. We'd like to thank all of you for participating, for being here today, for spending the day with us, our sponsors, our speakers, those of you who stuck around all the way to the end, those of you on webcast. We hope to see you again next year. Sasha, Harry, thank you as always. Tomorrow you start planning next year's, okay? Drive safe, everyone. We'll see you next year. Thank you.